It will give you a red carpet, movie star, absolute God's given beautiful finish to your skin like you have never seen before. Hey guys, I am so excited to dive into part 2 of 2021's Best of Makeup series. Part 1, we talked about primers, foundations, and concealers. And in part 2 today, we're kind of picking right up where we left off. Almost think of it like a makeup routine. So if we did our primer, our foundation, and our concealer, what are we moving on to next? We are setting it, doing bronzer and blush. So specifically, we'll be talking about the different kinds of setting powder. That's gonna be a big part of the video to break down the difference between setting powders, finishing powders, and powder foundations, as well as cream bronzer, cream blush, and powder blush. So that is what we are diving into today. If you watched part 1 of the video, which I hope you did, you know the criteria for this video, how these products got picked, how they became my holy grail, and kind of how I judge everything. I'll spare you because I explained everything in part 1. But before we dive into today's video, make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on part 3 when I do post it. Hit the notification bell right next to the subscribe button and you'll be notified the minute I upload a new video every single time here on YouTube, as well as follow me over on Instagram and TikTok. TikTok is popping off over there. I'm always posting on TikTok. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive right on in to 2021's best bronzers, blushes, and setting powders of the year. So the first thing in my routine, if I did my primer, my foundation, and my concealer, everything is done and ready to be set, I am going to go in with setting powders first, meaning that they are meant to set the concealer and foundation. I think this is probably one of the most underappreciated, underrated, and most important steps in a makeup routine, because this step is actually heavily responsible for the texture of the makeup, the way it looks, the flawlessness of it, the airbrushness of it, and the lasting power. And I think a lot of people will always tell me like, oh, I'm using an amazing foundation, but I always feel like it settles. And I'm like, okay, are you setting it? And they go, no. And I'm like, that's why it's settling. It is such a huge missed opportunity in a lot of people's makeup routines, but it is by far so important. So what a setting powder is just to set the liquid products. Liquid will move on the skin most of the time if it's not set with a powder. Think of it as almost sealing it in place, taking away the liquidy shine that foundation and concealers have. It's gently mattifying everything, making it look like skin again, and it's also preventing it from creasing, dissipating, sliding, and moving on the skin, which is honestly what's gonna give you the long wear for your makeup. Setting powders are not adding any coverage, which I think is important to note, which is why a lot of setting powders will be marketed as translucent setting powders, meaning there is no color or coverage. Be warned that a lot of lines that have translucent powders, there's actually like a pigment to them. They'll look very pinky or peachy, and if you're fair like me or fairer, you wanna stay away from things like that. You really wanna almost get one that is a white or an off-white translucent powder. As you get into darker complexions, more of a medium to a darker skin tone, you will see a translucent powder start to get more yellowy. It may be marketed as a banana powder. That's totally fine, because something that is white or off-white might make the skin look a little bit too ashy and might actually lighten or mess with the tone of your foundation. So you actually do want to go deeper. So keep that in mind if you are more of a medium or darker skin tone. So I'll stop rambling and show you my absolute favorite setting powders. So when I'm picking a beautiful setting powder, I am looking for certain things. You want it to be very finely milled, and that being said, a finely milled powder is going to fill and blur the skin. I am somebody that if you were up close, which I'll spare you, all on my nose and on the sides of my nose, I have very large pores. And when I'm going in with a foundation, you can see those pores. You can see that texture. And what I do is I'll actually, especially when I'm setting my concealer first thing, I will dip my beauty blender into my setting powder and press it into my concealer, and it just blurs and smooths my entire under eye as well as my nose and those pores, that pore area. When I'm doing it on a client, I will do the exact same thing, and then I will take a fluffy brush, swirl it around the setting powder, and press it onto the skin all around to lock in, blur, and smooth, and just set all of the foundation everywhere other than what I just did under the eyes. So that being said, these are my ultimate setting powders that I cannot recommend enough. Most of them honestly will work for everybody. One of them is really geared towards oily skin. So now let's talk about my ultimate best of the year setting powders. powders. Number one on this list is from Beauty Bakerie. This is in the white, in the rice color. It is so, so gorgeous. I use this white rice one. Rice is just the color, it's not an ingredient. But I use the white one for setting my under eyes. As someone who is fair, I don't like to lose the highlight in my under eyes when I am doing my makeup. So I normally use a white powder under the eyes to really keep the brightness or even add brightness. And this is just such a beautiful, finely milled powder. You can even see when I open it, it almost has like a smokiness to the powder. That's how smooth and finely milled. But you can tell a powder is great when you dip into it and actually rub it on the back of your hand. And where you're running it, you will actually see it. As you're pressing it in, it will actually smooth and blur the texture on your skin. That is how a beautiful, finely milled setting powder will actually make your skin look smoother and more airbrushed and enhance the long wear of your makeup. But the Beauty Bakerie powders come in a beautiful range of shades, so this will really work on any skin tone. I recommend the white if you are fair like me and want to highlight the under eye, but if you're using this all over the face, I would go with one darker than this. The second up on this list is the Kimchi Chic Beauty Puff Puff Pass Translucent Powder. This is in translucent. I also have this in white. I use the translucent on my face and the white under my eyes. Again, this is the exact same thing. I think this powder is absolutely beautiful for anyone who wants to blur the skin, set the skin, but you can bake with it and it doesn't look heavy. You can bake with the Beauty Bakerie as well. A lot of these are very similar to each other. They just kind of all are of the same caliber of amazing to me. So there really is nobody that can't use these two powders. I would maybe say the Beauty Bakerie is a little bit better for mature skin because it's a little bit more finely milled. I would say the only people that should stay away from this are people who have mature skin, but I think anybody who is oily, combo, or dry, either one of these powders will be absolutely perfect for you. Now moving into the setting powder that is perfect or geared more towards people who have oily skin, who really need that set insurance that you are going to mattify your T-zone and keep that oil from coming through. This is, of course, the Laura Mercier setting powder. This setting powder is famous for a reason. I normally use this on people who are more oily, and I can tell that they are more oily in their T-zone because I think it is a little bit more of a heavy-duty setting powder, and on people who have dry or more mature skin, it can look a little heavy and make the skin look a little powdery or textured, and so I stay away from that with dry and mature. I will use my other two and my next recommendation, but this one really is my go-to for people who have oily skin. There is no better setting powder to lock in the makeup and make it last all day. So now for my absolute number one holy grail setting powder that I use on almost every single client, this is the Huda Beauty Easy Bake Loose Baking and Setting Powder. I have it in two colors. I have it in Sugar Cookie and Cupcake. It's kind of hard to see in this packaging. Sugar Cookie is the whiter one and Cupcake is a little bit darker. It doesn't really leave a cast on the skin, so I would honestly consider these both translucent. The only thing with Cupcake is it does work on 99% of people, but like I said, I just don't like to lose the highlight and brightness under the eye, so I went ahead and got Sugar Cookie, which is very white, to really keep and add brightness to the skin. But these powders are unmatched. They are so finely milled. They blur the skin like an absolute dream, fill the pores, make the skin look absolutely airbrushed, flawless, silky, smooth, and they are enhancing the long wear and locking everything into the skin like a dream. They're preventing you from getting shiny and oily throughout the day. And if you are looking for a setting powder that you can dab all over the skin or press onto the concealer to keep everything from creasing and make it last all day, my number one recommendation are these Huda Beauty setting powders. Now let's go ahead and move on to powder foundation. So powder foundation, unlike a setting powder, is going to give you coverage. So you can actually use this as a foundation and it's going to build up coverage on the skin when you use it. I very rarely, if ever, use foundation powder as my only foundation. I use liquid on everybody, but what I use powder foundation for is actually, it is a brilliant technique to build up a little bit more coverage on somebody that's skin may be more mature or textured or dry and can't handle honestly any products on the skin without it looking cakey or dry and accentuating that texture. And if that is your skin, I would recommend going in with a very hydrating, soft focus liquid foundation, something like this, the L'Oreal True Match Nude Serum Foundation, and then building up a little bit more coverage where you need it with a powder foundation. So I'll take my powder foundation on a big fluffy brush like this and press and roll it into the skin, meaning I'll swirl it around, tap it off, and press it and roll it into these areas like red cheeks or on a nose that the foundation is breaking up, or I can still see the pores, texture, maybe on mature skin that I want to be light-handed with the liquid. And this will actually fill those pores, give you that oomph of coverage. And why I love this one so much is because I actually use this on myself, even though I don't need any more coverage, because it is a baked powder foundation. It's honestly one of its kind in that regard, where it just smooths and adds a second skin, full coverage, beautiful, almost plastic look to the skin if you're a full coverage kind of gal. And it's just to die for, especially when I'm doing bridal clients and they do want that oomph of glam and just flawlessness. This is the Laura Geller Baked Powder Foundation. So these I have just been so in love with, and like I said, they are baked, which is really unique. I have it in fair and medium, and like I said, I will just do the liquid foundation, set it with the setting powder, and then press this on top of my own to give that added coverage, smoothness. Because it's baked, it is just so fine and creamy and really just melts into the skin like an absolute dream. But if you are somebody that likes just powder foundation as your only foundation and want to wear it as nothing more, this powder foundation is incredible for that. I would recommend checking out an Ali Glines video, I'll link it down below, where she actually demos this and uses nothing but the powder foundation on her skin, and it looks to die for. It's the reason I bought it, and I just can't recommend it enough. And now we're moving on to finishing powders. As I said, setting powders are for setting the makeup. They are very little coverage and just blur and keep the long wear of the makeup. Powder foundations have coverage. Finishing powders are kind of that last step in your powder routine of the complexion before bronzer and blush to kind of finesse or correct any problems you see going on. So let me show you my holy grail so you can get a better understanding, having a visual. So this is the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush powder. She is used and abused. Why I love this so much is because if I have anybody that maybe their face looks incredible, but I lost a little bit of the highlight under the eye, or I want to smooth and blur a little bit more in here, and I don't want to use a powder foundation because they don't need any more coverage. The liquid looks beautiful. We're ready to go. All I did was set it. No powder foundation has been used, and it's just the setting powder. But like I said, I want to blur a little bit more, fill in those pores, maybe brighten the under eyes a little bit more. That's where I'm going to use a finishing powder. So the Charlotte Tilbury, there's nothing better. This is obviously called airbrush powder for a reason. It really does make the skin look airbrushed, and it just adds such a smoothness to the overall finish of the skin that is unmatched. There is a beautiful drugstore dupe for this. This is the number 7 powder. This is called the Lift and Illuminate Triple Action Powder. This is what it looks like. It is in a silver package. These two are absolutely beautiful, and these I would say are so much better for the complexion and all around the face. If you want a beautiful finishing powder for the under eye that really brightens the under eye, if you feel like you need something to brighten with a little bit more punch than a translucent setting powder, this is the Essence Brighten Up powder. This is beautiful for people who I want to really add brightness to the skin and lift and brighten their under eyes, even on mature clients who I want to use a very sheer concealer or a little bit of concealer because I don't want it to settle, but I still want to give them the brightness. I will set their concealer with this to just punch it up and give a little bit more of that brightness and coverage. Now moving right along to cream bronzers. So there is one cream bronzer for me that has stolen my heart, and I don't know if I could ever cheat on her. It is the Huda Beauty Tantour. This stuff is so beautiful, as you can see from how used and abused it is. It comes in 5 or 6 colors, I believe, and it is so beautifully curated to have the best undertones I have really ever seen in a cream bronzer. Sometimes they can be too cool and gray or too warm, and sometimes there's a benefit to having a cream bronzer that is more cool because it can really sculpt and add a shadow, but that's a whole lot of steps a lot of us don't have. And if you're looking for a beautiful all-in-one cream bronzer, I've used it in almost all of my other YouTube videos and on TikTok, so feel free to check it out if you want to see how it looks. But I love using cream bronzer after my foundation and before my concealer to add all of that sun-kissed warmth to the skin that just looks so hydrated and golden bronzy gorgeousness that I am just so obsessed with cream contouring. If you're new to it, that's kind of a conversation for a different day. Let me know if you want me to make you a specific video about how to cream contour, but if you're someone that's familiar with it, I can't recommend this enough. But this is my holy grail. I use it on every single one of my makeup clients. And now for powder bronzers, I love no more than these two right here. These are my holy grails. I use them on every single client. This is the Milani Silky Matte Bronzer. I use shade number 3. And the reason I love this so much is because I think it is just the most perfect neutral suntan look, especially people who are more fair. You really can build this up and make it look very dark, but on people who are more fair, it's not orangey at all. It's kind of hard to swatch just on the back of my hand, but as you can maybe see here, it doesn't look orangey. It looks like the most beautiful neutral tone, and I tend to gravitate towards powders that are more matte like this, because I think powders that have a luminosity or glow to them, you really need to have beautiful, flawless skin without pores or texture to pull off a powder like that, because it will just accentuate that texture. But I think a matte powder will actually blur the skin a little bit better than something that has a radiance to it. So this is a go-to on about 80% of my clients for that reason, because I just think it adds that contour and structure to the face without accentuating any texture. It doesn't move the foundation underneath, which is a huge, huge plus for me. And then the other line I am obsessed with are the Huda Beauty Heatwave bronzers. So I have 2 of them here. So this is the more cool tone and this is the more warm tone. You can see the difference between the two. It is a very stark difference. These are the only 2 in the shade range. This is what the front of it looks like. The more warm tone is called Sunswept M1 and the more cool tone is Sunrise L2. I love the cool tone powder like this, specifically for people who are very fair. And I'm gonna swatch this now next to the Milani so you could maybe see the difference. This is the Flower and this is the Milani. You can see how the Flower is even more cool tone than the Milani. I use that on people who are very fair or more mature, for the reason being that people who are more fair, they're gonna pull more orange, so you have to go more cool tone on them to make it look natural. And this is my go-to cool tone bronzer for someone who is more fair. And on top of it, I think people who are very fair tend to err on the side of being a little bit more dry. It's just kind of biological that the darker your skin is, the more oily it tends to be. Not always. The more fair you are, you're gonna err on the side of being a little bit more dry. And I think the bronzer like this, that these also have a beautiful luminosity to them, but not overwhelming. It adds a dewiness back into the skin that I think a lot of people who have fair skin need when they are wearing a bronzer on top like this, just to add that glow back in, which is also why this is my go-to bronzer for people who have more mature skin, for that reason, because I want to add that luminosity and glow into the skin to make the more mature skin look revived and hydrated and beautiful, and not make it look too matte and sallow. Moving right along here to cream blushes, I have 2 here that are my holy grail, tried and true. I love them so much. The first one is the Milani Chef's Kiss cream blushes. These are so gorgeous. This is such a hydrating, opaque formula that I really think looks beautiful when you blend it out. And for me, a big test with a cream bronzer is, like, for instance, I have the e.l.f. Putty blushes here. I don't like them because I think when you put them on the skin, they blend away, meaning that when I go to blend this in and soften the edges, it disappears on the skin. And the amount of blending I have to do for cream blush, you have to realize cream blush is going on top of unset, meaning no powdered, liquid foundation, and that will blend away your foundation. I don't want to do that much blending to a cream blush because it's going to disturb the foundation underneath. I want to be able to use a beauty blender, press this on top where I need it. It blends out like a dream, but gives me the coverage I'm looking for. It actually has pigment to it. This blush, for this reason, gives me that coverage that I'm looking for, blends out gorgeously, and on top of it, as you can see from this swatch, it just has a beautiful luminosity to it that really just makes the skin look glowy and gorgeous. I especially love this for people who are a little bit more on the dry side or more mature skin. These look gorgeous. This one honestly is in the exact same boat as that Milani. This is the Revolution Fast Base Blush. It's a bit of a tongue twister. This is what these look like. They're in a gorgeous twist up component that I think is so easy to use. You can swipe it right on the skin. I personally like to dip my beauty blender into both of them and apply it on. And the beautiful thing about this one is this can go over powder. So even if you've set your makeup, you can add this on like as the last step, and it looks gorgeous. It doesn't make the foundation or powders break up on the skin at all because there's no oils in either one of these. This I love. I can tell when I'm going into a client where I don't really want to put any more powders on them because they're looking a little powdery or dry skinned. I will just kind of hydrate and balm things up with both of these cream blushes, and they're just to die for. Last but not least, we are heading into powder blushes. So I have 3 here for you. They are my holy grail tried and trues. This one is the love of my life. It is so gorgeous on every single person I put it on. It may feel intimidating, but I promise you, there is no more gorgeous blush on the market. I use this on every single one of my bridal clients, and it just makes them look like absolute princesses. It really is to die for. This is the Neutrogena Vibrant 20 blush. Vibrant 20 is the shade. I really wish it would focus, but this is kind of what the color looks like. And like I said, you may be intimidated by it, but it doesn't come out that strong. Make sure to dip it, tap off the excess, and press this onto the skin, and it just looks gorgeous. I use matte blushes like this on people who really have textured skin, which is most people, just pores or dryness or fine lines that I don't want to accentuate that. But the next blush I'm going to show you, if someone can handle having a little bit more of a glowy blush to add that luminosity. And I was just about to say, I don't really even use highlighter on my clients. 99% of people, in my opinion, cannot handle highlighter on the skin without it just showing all the fine lines and texture. And if you're doing the makeup well and setting it properly where it has a glow in the skin, I don't think you need any more glow in that regard. I think it's definitely more of an added kind of extracurricular. If you're someone that really wants to be glowy, do it up. I don't use it on almost all my clients, but this blush for me does that for me and adds that glow in. This is the Milani. Let me show you one that the packaging hasn't ripped off. This is the Milani Baked Blushes. My 2 favorite colors are Dolce Pink right here, and my number 1 favorite that I use on 99% of my clients here is Luminoso, which is a little bit more of a peach tone to it. It is just so breathtaking on everybody. I put this on, can't recommend these enough. And last but not least, if you're somebody that you're looking for a palette that will just kind of be an all-in-one, I'm disgusted with myself for showing you a broken palette, but it is what it is. This is also from Revolution. This is the Roxy blush palette. I think there's a hair on it. Like, what is wrong with me? I think this is such a beautiful curation of neutrals, pinks, peaches, darker shades for every client. They have a soft matte kind of a look to them with a little bit of a sheen, so it really works for everybody. But if you're looking for a palette, I think this is $14.99. You can't beat it for 8 blushes. And now this is a little bonus I'm throwing in at the end here. I'm gonna put this in my finishing powder category, and the reason that is because this is my secret weapon when it comes to bridal makeup. I will do their foundation, concealer, cream contour, set everything with the setting powder, go in with a powder bronzer, powder blush, or cream blush, finish the complexion, and my last step to every single client's complexion is this powder here. Why? Because it adds the most beautiful candle glow, lit smoothness, and dewy, beautiful hydration to the skin that diffuses any texture or kind of heavy look to the skin and just adds a finished, Academy Award winning, I can't drive it home enough, gorgeousness to the skin. And that is the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Powders. This is the little palette that they sell, so this is a little bit more expensive. I did have one of these singles, but it was so used and abused, I took my holiday discount as a time to pick up the new palette, a new palette. This is what the single looks like, and this is the palette. This here is in Diffuse Light is the color. The Ambient Lighting is the series, so Ambient Lighting Powders is the line, and that color is called Diffused Light. In this palette here, this is Dim Light, Incandescent Light, and Radiant Light. I got this one because it just appeals to more skin tones, which I need as a bridal makeup artist. Run your brush through these. You could do all three, it doesn't even matter. The coverage is so light. And just brush this or press this onto your complexion when you are done with everything else, and I'm telling you, it will give you a red carpet, movie star, absolute God's given beautiful finish to your skin like you have never seen before. The other reason I love it so much is because I will build up the bronzer and blush a little heavier than I want it to look at the end, so it doesn't fade away on me. Put this on top of everything, it tones down that bronzer and blush and makes all of the multi-dimensional tones I just worked to put onto your skin look like they're coming from you within rather than laying on top of your skin. That is the power of these ambient lighting powders. I cannot recommend them enough. They are a little bit more pricey, but as you know, I rarely recommend pricey items, and this has to be my #1 most loved luxury product I have ever purchased and I currently know of on the market. That is it for today's video, guys. I hope you took something away from part 2. You guys know I pour everything into these, and every single product I recommended to you has been tried and true, put through the ringer, and been tested on hundreds of faces. I promise you that. So I hope there was something in this video tailor-made for you that you are interested in trying. Make sure to check out part 3 of this video. To not miss out on part 3, make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the little notification bell next to the subscription button, and you'll be notified the minute I upload part 3. Thank you so much for watching wherever you are. I hope you are happy, safe, and healthy. Thank you so much for watching.